Hello and welcome to Dentistry to Business, the Dental CEO podcast where data meets strategy and leadership transforms practices. I am Caroline Bell-Minturn, a proud dental clinic owner, creator of cutting-edge dental analytic systems, and a mentor to ambitious dental professionals like you. This is the show where we dive into the metrics and science of building thriving multi-seven-figure and beyond dental practices. Whether you're looking to master analytics, lead with confidence, or scale your clinic without sacrificing quality, you are in the right place. Let's decode the numbers, unlock your potential, and create a legacy practice that you've always dreamed of. Ready to lead the industry? Let's succeed together. Hello and welcome to Dentistry to Business. I am your host, Caroline Bell-Minturn, and I have a very special guest here who was requested to be on the podcast, my husband and business partner, Dr. Philip Minturn. He is somebody who seems to be misunderstood and also a little bit of a mystery man. He does not own any social media. And he kind of does a lot of things behind the scenes that people are interested in about. So we had quite a few questions come in about our dynamic, and we're very similar and different in many ways. So we're going to answer some of the requested questions. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. I live here, so I don't have a choice.
Okay, so one of the first questions that was asked is how it all started. What made us decide to partner together? So I'll let you answer that.
Well, my background as a dentist obviously was I graduated from school and I own my own practice. I bought it 6 months after graduation from an awesome guy who turned out to be one of my best friends, basically the best man at my wedding when Caroline and I were married, and a great mentor to me and someone who really made my career in dentistry what it is today, Dr. John Cox. Unfortunately, he passed away a little over a year ago, and that's left a bit of a hole in my dental world. But he was very instrumental in my success as a dentist. Moving forward a few years, I had the opportunity through some business partners and some acquaintances in dentistry to begin a journey where I was essentially the CEO of a DSO, a dental service organization that owned multiple practices. We started out with one satellite office, and things grew from there. And eventually, myself and my partners we had participated in 24 purchases and sales. We had merged offices together. We had 10, 12 locations at any given time. And it was quite a large enterprise. We had upwards of 90 to 100 staff. We had 15 or 20 associates in various locations around Nova Scotia, all of which were around an hour or so away. That role, I was a full-time practicing dentist. I also taught at the dental school for a period of time in that window, probably about 5 years, as a part-time clinical instructor, and was heading this DSO and was largely responsible for the financials and a lot of the day-to-day operations with my other partners. And that led me to a situation where I met Caroline ultimately. We met socially separately, but Caroline ended up being hired by one of the practices in that DSO as a hygienist when she moved to Nova Scotia from Ontario. And Caroline, I'll let her explain a bit more, but her background as a hygienist, she led a large hygiene team in Ontario and was recruited and hired by one of the larger offices in our group. That's how we met.
Yes.
Fast forward a little while, and we're married with a couple of kids. And along the way, it just didn't make sense for me to be involved as an owner, traveling to multiple locations in that DSO. Caroline as a leader of hygiene teams, as someone who was training other hygienists. It made sense for us to strike out on our own. And when I left that larger group, I was able to sell all my interests there and move the small practice that I was owner of to a new location that was a brand new start with Caroline as the office manager slash hygienist. And from there, our partnership kind of turned into owning and running this office together and growing it from a very small start into a gigantic practice now, basically, that's upwards of 9 to 10,000 patients. And I think we have the equivalent of 7 full-time hygienists. I think that's made up of nine to 10 individuals. We have 6 or 7 assistants. We just hired a new assistant, so I think that makes 7 now, and 3 associates full time, but a part time semi retired associate as well. So I believe, according to what some of our sales reps have told us, that we are the one of the largest single ownership dental practices in Atlantic Canada. There are certainly larger practices, but they're usually made up of 3 or 4 dental practices owned by separate owners. There are some corporate practices that may have more associates, but Caroline and I are the owners of that practice. The buck stops with us. And we're now up to 31 staff, I believe it is. So it's a large organization. And that's kind of where we've arrived. And I think Caroline can explain our roles in this organization a little bit better.
Yeah, so I would say how we partnered initially is essentially Phil was leaving his corporate group. I had always wanted a potential ownership. I was actually partnering with another friend of mine. We were looking at buying a practice. Neither of us had went down the road of owning a practice at this point. So Phil had offered, why don't you both come on and mentor with him? I was going to learn the operational side, the managerial side, and my partner was going to do associate dentistry. And long story short, she ended up staying as an associate dentist. She's now moving on to her own. She's spreading her wings and heading on her own without us. And she's going to do an associateship at another office locally with us. Just being able to support her as a friend at this point. So it definitely has evolved into a unique partnership that was unprepared. We thought that this would be something probably temporary. We didn't know how we would want to work closely 40 hours a work week and then come home every single night and have a family life. So we initially started this partnership off as temporary. And we decided that we actually really loved working together, and it has not come without its stressful moments. But ultimately, we really do enjoy working together. So our roles early on, I think where I came in anyways, is I really came in from wanting to learn from Phil. I felt like he was somebody that could really mentor me in the business side. I was very eager. I came from a practice that it was also a single ownership practice in Ontario. It was very large, and the owner of that practice really was able to kind of explain to me a lot of the business side, as well as I was his dental assistant and then went on to be a hygienist. So I knew I had interest in it, and I kind of took the role and really ran with it. And I think I really exceeded your expectations. I'll let you speak to that, but I found Phil a really good mentor to teach me different things that I didn't know. And your role early on was kind of mentoring me and also taking charge of the clinical side of things.
So, my background as a dentist, obviously, your training in dental school teaches you to do the dentistry. And then in buying a practice 6 months out of school, I spent a lot of time training myself to run the business. And it hasn't been without hiccups. I can't say I've run a mistake-free dental practice from a business standpoint my entire career. I don't think anybody could say that. But I think I applied myself as much or more than anyone else I know in learning how to operate a dental practice as a business. Things about how our fee guides work in Canada, particularly. I spent 8 years on the fee guide committee for the Nova Scotia Dental Association. I got involved in understanding how government programs work by being the chair of one of the dental association committees that negotiated with government about those programs. So I learned a lot about the nuts and bolts of how we bill our services and how we bill insurance companies and how collections work and how we do the two things that are really, really important in making a dental practice successful. Be efficient and productive, number one, because production high means that we're bringing in money effectively and keeping our expenses low, not unreasonably low. I think both of these things can be misunderstood by people. Dentists often want to push production really high and try to clamp down on expenses in ways that can be negative for staff. But trying to maximize those things in an ethical and responsible way was stuff that I immersed myself in for a really long time in a lot of different ways to try and make sure my practice ran correctly. But when I moved on from the big group, I applied myself and really did a lot of the sort of chief financial officer roles for that group, monitoring bank accounts, productions, things like that. So I learned a lot of how to build my own spreadsheets, build my own tracking systems to help offices, the individual offices, track what they were doing, identify holes, and try to fill those holes, whether it be with efficiency, whether it be reining in expenses, whether it be compensating people properly for the jobs they were doing. And a lot of that was training that I took, along with inventing my own ways to keep track of that. Um, then, where Caroline comes in, the strong point that I had behind the scenes doing those things was my brain works on numbers. I'm a big believer that incentives run the world, not just financial incentives, but incentives that lead you to different behaviors, whether it's productivity, efficiency. Um, uh, I could get into a lot about incentives and how those incentives, not just monetary, work to make people's behavior different. Um, but I'm not a people person. I'm a numbers person. I think a lot of my patients would disagree because I've made some great friends over the years. I have amazing patients that I love. Um, but outside of that, when you spend all day interacting with lots of different people, that takes up that space for personal engagement and being social, being outgoing. And then at the end of the day, when you come home, that isn't necessarily who you are. You can't be as engaged and be as much of a people person when you're focused on that all day long. Caroline's a people person all the time. So when it comes to engaging with staff members, implementing policies, understanding the dynamics of someone that's sitting in front of you for a job interview, knowing the questions to ask, knowing how to read the answers, Caroline's very much the people person. And she was coming from a background of being able to do the management of a hygiene team very effectively from a people person engagement kind of situation. But what she didn't have a lot of was the systems to track things. And what Caroline did was learned a lot from me about those spreadsheets, about the things I tracked, about how everything um, from that background behind the scenes situation evolved over my career. And then she took that and ran with it and applied her own sensibilities and her own ideas to it and further developed those things to an entirely different level. So I'll let her talk a little bit more about that. But it's really enabled us to elevate our practice beyond what I think most practices can do. And when some of these podcasts will talk about things like making your practice a destination that staff are drawn to, making your practice a destination that patients are drawn to, elevating your dentistry, elevating your practice, customer service education for dentists. Um, those are all the touchy feely things that Caroline's extremely good at, and I'm good at the numbers. But she's taken the numbers aspect that we have brought together to an entirely different level that the staff can be very engaged with.
Yeah, I think that your initial touch on how the numbers worked and what the metrics are in measuring dental practice and the success, it's there. But what I was able to do is kind of really hone in on aspects that people typically don't look at and really find some of those gaps. Coming from a hygienist perspective, I really initially started in that aspect and looked at the hygiene team. And the thing with the hygienist in your practice is they're really the driving force of the success of the business. And you can do a lot of measurement with just hygiene. And then from that aspect, I was able to expand and broaden what we were looking at. And I think that was really surprising to you in some ways. And you were really excited to see some of the measurements that we were doing in the practice. And we were able to take those numbers and combine them with what Phil looks at and really kind of amplify what we were doing in our practice and moved our needle in success very quickly between the two of us. So the roles early on were definitely, from my aspect, more of a learning stage. And I will give credit to Phil that I felt like he was very supportive in the role, complimentary in the things that I was doing that, were out of the norm and maybe stuff that he hadn't looked at in the past that were really elevating things. And we kind of created this dynamic together to make sure that we were pushing success in the business and working cohesively as a team. So that's kind of been our role together from initial phase to now. Phil does most of the backside dentistry. He's really clinical. He's really pushing the needle in the office for the production aspect to grow the business in a financial way clinically. And I'm doing all of the behind the scenes and training people to also help me implement and engage the staff in the way that we need to continue to do, and I can still explore and help other practices do the same. So that's kind of where it all started, to give you a long spiel. But we'll get through some of these other questions here. We have lots to go through. Somebody asked, are we opposite or are we twins, and how exactly we complement each other? My take on this is we're two totally, completely different individuals with the same values, goals, stubbornness, hard work ethic. I think that we work really amazing together, but then there's times that we can definitely collide because we're both very strong-willed people. So we're definitely opposites in terms of personality, opposites in the way that we engage and interact with other people. Our interests are totally different outside of the office, but I think we really do have the same core values. Would you say anything different?
I think it's a stretch to say our interests are different. As a couple, we do lots together. We spend almost all our time together.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't do a lot of things without the other person. I've always been a big Disney nut, and Caroline had never been to Disney World before.
You converted me.
Once she started going, she's now the one who plans the next trip every time, not me, which is excellent. Our kids love it. We go to Disney a lot. And there are lots of other things we do together. We enjoy where we live. We live on a lake and enjoy that. And we enjoy other places to travel together. But like I said, we really do so much together. I don't want to have a lot of time by myself. Caroline doesn't want to have a lot of time by herself. We just enjoy each other's company, but we're not similar personalities. I think we would both tire of that very quickly. I know I wouldn't like myself very much. And I think, as Caroline said, we have a lot of different approaches and we have a lot of different personality traits. But at the same time, we have the same core values and we believe in a lot of the same things. So at the same time, we complement each other. We both bring different things to the table. Um, I think one of the things that has helped separate us is just the idea that we both understand that a dental practice, as much as dentists do want to do the best for their patients, and dental training is about healthcare and providing the best health outcomes to their patients. But the lion's share of dentists in Canada work as individual small business owners or work in a small business owned by another dentist or a dental corporation. A dentistry practice is a business. It's a fact, it's reality. It's not the same as a hospital where doctors and nurses work that are not a standalone for-profit small business or larger corporate business. And we've tried to mesh those things together. The values that we want to treat the patients great, do great dentistry, but at the same time realize there are business principles that we have to adhere to in order to be successful. And I think that's one of the things that we bring to the table when helping other dentists with their business is we help them understand that yes, you're a healthcare provider, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong to run your business according to appropriate business principles. And that by doing so, it is going to enable you to provide the best care to your patients. Ignoring business principles is going to do things to your business that are going to make it harder for you to care for your patients with the best technology, the best techniques, provide pro bono work when you want to. If you're just not, if you're not on top of those business principles, you're sacrificing your ability to do the patient care that you really at the core of your values as a dentist want to do.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what would you say our strengths are and our blind spots are? I would say for you, strength is definitely intelligence for sure. You you definitely have that one. Blind spots, I would say for you would be, well, you already kind of said it. It's your interpersonal skills and being able to, um, I wouldn't say like talk to people, like you're really good at talking to people, but you definitely leave that up to me. So I'd say that would be your blind spot.
As much as I look so approachable, the general perception of me is that I'm not. I intimidate the staff, whether that's intentional or not. I'll leave up for debate, but um, I am generally not the touchy-feely, approachable one of the two. Staff are best suited when they have concerns or problems to speak to Caroline because she's a very open personality. She's someone who understands people. She's someone who's certainly more empathetic than I am by 1,000 miles. And although I've learned to be much more so being married to Caroline, I think she's also learned to be much more analytical being married to me. And those are the strengths we bring together to help each other understand the things that we're not really well suited for from the outset of our personalities. Um, I think it's really sort of a situation where I can bring Caroline back to the center when she gets too emotionally attached to something, when she gets too empathetic, when she goes a little too far on the touchy-feely side.
I wouldn't
And
say touchy-feely sad. I'm not touching no staff.
I mean, in terms of emotional
Yeah.
understanding and speaking to staff about emotional things and trying to separate the fact that this is an employee and not a best friend, and this is an employee and not a family member. Those are the things that I've helped center Caroline with, because sometimes we can get too attached to the idea that
Steve's making his
that we
debut.
want to try and help fix everyone's problems, and that is not our job. As much as we care about our staff, they are our employees at the end of the day, and we have to be a little careful.
Yeah, that's
Um,
definitely a strength for you, I would say.
and then
And
Caroline brings me back when I get too far away from that emotional connection, and when I get too analytical and a little bit too cut and dried, black and white. There, she brings me back to understand something that another mentor of mine. I did my master's of education when I was in teaching at the dental school, and a professor by the name of Bly Frank, who's now, I believe, out west. He taught me to always think that everybody comes from somewhere, whether that's their background, it could be their religion, where they were born, it could be, there are all kinds of factors in where someone comes from. And I sometimes have a difficulty bringing myself back to that position, and Caroline really pulls me back there to help understand people and where they're coming from on a more emotional level that you just can't ignore.
yeah, I think that's definitely accurate. Okay, so how are we dividing tasks? Who takes a leadership role, and what does conflict resolution look like in terms of partnership? So, to kind of wrap this one up really quick, because I think we would both agree on this, dividing of tasks is exactly what we had said. Phil's main primary objective at this point is to really push the boundaries, push the wheel at production, getting his clinical aspects and making sure that the elevation on the clinical side in the office is being adhered to, making sure we're offering the patients the best quality services. And in our position, in our minds, we believe that is investing in dental technology and being a lead in the industry in those aspects to make sure our patients are receiving the top quality care that's not substandard or subpar and backwards. We're wanting to really push that needle for comfort level for the patients, patient experience, and drive that factor. So the division of task really is him implementing and me creating the idea and also getting the staff and employees on board with what that drive is. And then the leadership role, we both are leaders in different ways. I might lead the team in the direction, I might lead the team in the meetings, and Phil's leading the team on the floor, making sure that he is a leader in the office, showing like this can be done, this is how things should be done, and making sure that the team knows that they have the support upstairs in the clinic as well. Conflict resolution for us is difficult. I know another person asked about like how we argue and recover. So I guess this kind of is like a two bird, one stone question. It's not always easy. I mean, we work together, we have children together. Phil had mentioned we're constantly together. So when we have conflict, we've actually, I feel like, gotten a lot better at this, but we really kind of leave work at work. And when we come home, we don't talk about it anymore. This was extremely difficult for us in the first beginning stages because as you're growing a business and you're in those early stages, it is a lot more complex. There's a lot more on the line. Your employment for your team looks totally different. We have a totally different team now than what we started with, and all of those things can create different levels of stress. So at this point, I think we've kind of created a boundary that we know we can talk openly and we're not taking it too personal. We're still working on that, but I don't know. Do you have anything different about how we do conflict resolution?
Oh, well, I think we resolve things really well. And
And quickly.
whenever I feel like I'm on the losing end of one of those arguments, I just internally pretend I won. And it helps me cope with the fact that I may not have in that particular instance. But we're very good at seeing each other's side of things at the end of the day. We may not in the moment every single time. But these heated discussions, if we weren't having arguments about things like that, we wouldn't be learning about each other's perspectives on things.
Mhm.
And I think we would always be missing important parts of resolving whatever issue it is that we've had to deal with.
And just always making sure it's coming back from like a constructive place versus who's right and who's wrong and who's winning an argument. Ultimately, we're on the same team and we need to be the front of that team. And I agree. I think if you're not having disagreements, it doesn't need to be contentious, it doesn't need to be heated. But, as we have a personal relationship wrapped up into a professional relationship, sometimes those conversations can get in a standpoint that might be a little bit more elevated than if it was just with another employee. So I think it's just really important that we always come back to being a team and knowing that we're kind of moving the boat in the same direction. And that's kind of how we argue and recover and, just see each other's perspective, appreciate it, and know that there's no winning side. We win when we're working together and we recover. So people do call us a dynamic duo, which I always think is hilarious. But in one vision, two brains.
I'm
How,
Batman. She's Robin.
what was the other ones? Pinky and the brain. That was always your brain, Pinky. Yeah, definitely an amazing duo there. But how we set goals together is really simple. I think we kind of touch base on this initially. We really have the same sets of goals and values. And there's not really times where my goals don't align with where Phil wants to go. The thing that we clash on, in my perspective, is I see things maybe in a different way of how to get there. And I kind of have to coach Phil into getting on board with that, which ultimately feels for him like I twist his arm behind his back and then he reaps the rewards 6 months later when the proof is in the pudding and what I've suggested actually works out. So I think at this point in the game, and again, you can speak for yourself, but I think you've learned a little bit to let go and just like trust some of my instincts and intuition. Um,
That would be true.
where it was difficult for you at first,
Yeah,
correct?
that would be true. On the flip side of that thing, Caroline will sometimes layer um, goal on top of goal on top of goal
Yeah.
and try to achieve them all at
All
the
at the
same
same
time,
time.
which for a business can be stressful in
Yeah.
terms of just having the personnel dynamic to achieve so many things at once. And as a business, you do have to control your expenses and you
Yeah.
may want to progress forward, but it's impossible to invest in everything all at once. And you may have four or five in a fledgling practice or taking over a very old practice from someone that needs a lot of upgrades. You might want to do 10 different things all at the same time, whether it's technology or renovations or a move, or there could be all kinds of things. You just can't do them layered on top of each other to an extent that paralyzes you or stresses the practice financially to too large an extent. So I'm the person that sometimes reels Caroline back in. And as much as I defer to her judgment about a lot of things, she also ends up deferring to my judgment when I say, no, we need to give that another couple of months, or no, we need a little bit more time in between these two things just for change from issue one to stabilize before we throw issue two on top of it and have too many balls in the air at the same time. Jugglers can only juggle so many things at once. I think we're excellent at juggling a lot of things, but there is a limit that everybody has. And when you're running a business, you have employees, you have patients, you have a lot of people that depend on you. And if you put too many of those balls in the air at once, it can be stressful on those people as well. Despite your best intentions, you really don't want to cause confusion among staff. You don't want to overburden them. You want to have a workplace that's welcoming and friendly and has a stress-free dynamic. And you're never going to achieve that if you're pushing too much on people all at once.
Yeah, you definitely help me, or I feel like I'm better at that now. I think initially that was a struggle, but I think now um, I've learned, we do need to take time with implementation and have goals and set them and just a better way and a better system. Again, like coming back to the systems, here's how you implement. And when you see these benchmarks, then it's time to move to the next thing. So I think that's definitely been something that I've learned from working with Phil for sure. Um, so how we make decisions and what if we disagree on decisions. I think again, we just both come back to not who's right, but if we're having a disagreement, maybe we table that and we come back to it another time. There's going to be things that Phil and I both will feel are important to us as individuals. And in those situations, we have to kind of like listen to the other person's perspective and understand, this is important and to this person. And I feel like we should circle back and maybe try this or circle back to the topic and see what we can do to implement to make something work. But those disagreements can't last long. Like I feel with a partnership, and I always advise clients on this before you get into a partnership, make sure you can have a constructive conversation with somebody because you can have two totally different values, two totally different opinions. Once you get into business with somebody, it has to be set in stone of like this, if there's only a 50% partnership and there's only two people, there's not a third person to make a vote to say, I'm going to vote on this end. So what does that look like when we get to a standstill? Ultimately, we don't move ahead until both of us are at least relatively on the same page. So if Phil's really hard pressed on saying no to something, I have to respect that he's not in the position yet to feel comfortable to move forward. And it can't be a bullying situation. Now, there's definitely situations where I've been able to say, well, look at these aspects, and here's the financial numbers I've run. This does logically make sense, and we can do this. And Phil will have to come around to those ideas, or vice versa. So the disagreements don't tend to last long. It's moved along quickly. Um, and tools that we use to stay aligned with each other. I don't even know how to answer that. What do we do to stay aligned?
Tasers.
Tasers? I don't think so. What is it we do to stay aligned?
Well,
I
we
think we
have
just have a lot of respect for each other.
we do, and we work on a premise that I think all dentists and hygienists are familiar with, which is evidence-based thinking.
Yes.
Um, we don't make decisions emotionally as much as we might think something's a great idea and emotionally we're attached to it and we feel like it's the best way to go. We don't just make decisions based on feelings. And if I feel that Caroline comes to me with something that is totally feeling based, I will want to see the evidence for why is this the right time to make this decision? Why is this the right time to hire that staff member position that we're looking for? Why is it the right time to invest in that piece of equipment or technology? And if you can back up that emotional feeling with the evidence, then that's good enough for me. And I think the same thing applies when I have things that I need to work with Caroline on to come to a solution. I tend to come with the evidence, and then Caroline's looking for ways for me to convince her that it is the right thing to do from a feeling perspective. It's the right thing to do for the practice, for the patients, for the staff. Is it the right fit for our office? And I can give her all the evidence in the world, but if something doesn't feel like the right fit for her, and I can't give her that feeling, then we can't move forward.
And I
So
mean,
we rely on that evidence.
don't always get it right, but I mean, we try.
Everything that we do is based on an extended period of really trial and error. We've tried a lot of things. We've hired external consultants. We've done things on our own. We've worked with multiple banks, multiple bookkeepers. We've worked with consultants of different types.
We've literally
Um,
tried everything.
so this is all one of these things where we're talking to people about their dental businesses, not from a position of do what we do because we know best. It's here are ideas that we have that we want to help you customize to your practice based on things we've learned
along the
from
way.
trying a variety of different approaches over the years, not just our own, approaches of other consultants, approaches of other business advisors, approaches of other dentists that we've acquired practices from who brought wisdom to the table when I was part of the big group. So it's really trying to synergize all those things together.
Oh, this is a good one. What have we learned about money, trust, and growth? A lot. Um, I think going back to the what have we okay, take it step by step. What have we learned about money?
Well, I think the when Dr. Cox first welcomed me into his practice, the first thing that he told me was do good dentistry
Mhm.
and the finances will follow
Yes, I agree with that.
doing great dentistry.
Treat people well
And treat people well, treat people with respect, treat your patients like you're treating your mother,
and your employees.
and your employees like you're treating your family. And the financial benefits will come because you're treating people the right way. And that's always going to be true.
Mhm.
The issue is that you can't ignore business principles while doing that. So there are people that just think, I'll do great dentistry and the money will come. That's not as true as it was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You could hang out a shingle as a dentist and you'd be financially successful whether you mismanaged your practice or not, whether you adhered to good business principles or not.
Mhm.
But in this day and age, the dental landscape is more competitive. There are HR issues with staffing shortages and things like that that can paralyze your office if you're not attracting right people. Um, you do need to do these things together. It
Yeah.
is do great dentistry, be a great clinical dentist, treat your patients well, treat them like you're treating your family, but at the same time, respect yourself as a business person, respect that your services have value and that you should not be ashamed to charge people a reasonable value for the services that you provide, and run your business like a business because that is what it is. Your staff rely on you for their livelihood. And if you're not running your business effectively, it means you cannot pay your staff top level wages. It means you cannot give them the benefits that they and their families want. So understand that these people are not just employees. They're people who rely on you for their livelihood and to take care of their family. And I feel like we owe our staff that. So when we treat our business like a business, like it is supposed to be treated, that and treat the patients great, like they expect and they want, then the financial success and the money comes along with that.
Yeah. And I think both things can be true at the same time. You can do really great quality work and treatment and care ethically about your patients and also have smart business sense. I think both of those things people get intertwined. You can only have one, not the other. Like if we treat this like a business, does that mean we ethically don't care about the patients because we have a fundamental value that we're in healthcare, which we are. But ultimately, this is a different stream of healthcare that is a business aspect. So I think it's important for people to recognize that both of those things can be true at the same time.
And then the next part of that question was, what have we learned about trust? Well,
And growth, trust and growth. We'll combine that because
yeah,
I feel like that's a whole other podcast
in terms
episode.
of trust, I mean, we have learned dentists are far too trusting of business advisors, of giving duties to people and then not monitoring what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
not paying a close enough eye, putting a close enough eye on all kinds of aspects of how their business runs. And as dentists, we have both professional liabilities and we have financial liabilities that we're responsible. We're responsible to pay bills. We're responsible to our professional colleges for various responsibilities, and we cannot just entrust them and delegate them to staff completely. We have to monitor those situations.
Yeah.
We never hire anyone in our dental practice with the idea that they could betray you or do something dishonest, but it happens. It has happened to us. And in discussing this with professionals along the way, it happens to at least 30% of dental professionals have some sort of issue with employee dishonesty at
Mm-hmm.
some point in their careers. And we don't hire a person ever thinking that that's going to happen. But we do want to hire people, have trust in them, build solid relationships. And what that entails is not just giving someone the wheel of the car and then turning a blind eye to how they drive it. We have to constantly do checks and updates, and that is what builds that trust, not to the point that we ever give up doing those checks.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into the next question was like unexpected financial lessons that we've learned. And I feel like that one, again, we can't touch a lot on it. It's not that we want to withhold anything. We'll probably do a whole podcast episode on it when we can. But at the time being, we can't really touch on probably some of the areas we'd love to touch on. And the hardest financial lesson that we learned in our business is due to theft. And I think that that's an area that goes really overlooked, especially in dentistry. When it comes to that, it was so shocking and surprising to me how many dentists and dental practices fall victimized to theft in their practice to some capacity and the employment dishonesty factor in that. So I think our biggest learning lesson around financial unexpected risk would be employment dishonesty, to be honest. Um, Okay, what have we learned about hiring, expansion, and taking risks as we are partners? I feel like we're really good risk takers.
I honestly think as long as you're doing good clinical dentistry and doing your research on the techniques and things that you're incorporating in your practice, it's not risky to incorporate these things.
Yeah.
You just have to be informed and make good decisions about when the right time to invest in these things is, and don't stretch yourself too thin. It's just like your personal finances. Those are the same principles apply to your business. I think what I've learned, I wouldn't call it surprising because I think I have always known this, but I think what I've learned about the financials of dental practices and investment and things like that is that I think dentists vastly underestimate how how much they can improve their practices by investing in technology, and how overly cautious dentists often are at incorporating new technologies into their practices.
Mhm.
There is a lot of I'm not going to be the first guy to do that kind of thing. We're going to wait and see how this technology develops with other people first. And unfortunately, that means that if you have that mentality where you're going to wait and see how a technology develops, it means you're never going to be an early adopter of that technology and you're
Mhm.
always going to be playing catch up to other people. So I don't think it's risk taking. Things don't end up on the market without fairly thorough testing, without fairly thorough research, especially in Canada. But you should really be an early adopter of these technologies. And one thing that bothers me sometimes about one thing that bothers me about dentistry in general is that we are too hesitant with these things when some technologies come along that have very obvious patient care benefits. Dentists get caught up in how expensive it might be or how difficult it might be to learn or implement. In Nova Scotia, for example, we have a requirement every 3 years that we have to have 90 hours of CE. And I often see dentists think of this in terms of I have to hit my 90 hours. And
Mhm.
if they've hit their 90 hours by the end of year two, they spend a year not really doing much CE and not really learning about what new things are out there. Um, I always try to remind dentists when I talk to them, that's a minimum. You do that, that's your minimum requirement. The actual requirement is whatever it takes to stay on top of dentistry, to be at the forefront of our profession. And it might be, I think the last time I was audited, I inputted 120 some hours and just said, that's enough. I'm at my minimum. I've got more I could input into this logbook, but that's going to satisfy my audit. I probably did 180 hours of CE in those
Yeah.
3 years.
We do a lot
Um,
of continuing education.
and that keeps us at the forefront of what's available. We get to know what's available. We get to do hands-on courses in it. We don't limit ourselves to hitting that minimum target and then miss out on courses because, oh, well, we'll wait until our cycle's over and do it in our next cycle so it counts towards our next 90 hours. If that technology is there, if it exists, I don't care if I've maxed my hours out. I want to know about it because if it's going to bring something beneficial to my patients, if it's going to make my practice more efficient, if it's going to provide better care, make the work we do last longer, why would I wait till next year to learn those things? I want to learn them now and see if it's something I should incorporate in my practice now, or at least start learning about it and preparing to implement it in the future.
Yeah, and I think too, when I'm reading this question, I think it's also asking like how we're taking risks as partners when we're hiring and expanding. But realistically, I don't feel like when we hire and expand, it is a risk because we know our data so well. Like we are so systemized. We have so many um, spreadsheets and analytics that we're looking at, that when we decide to expand and we decide to
Yeah.
hire, we have that number already down. We already know.
That's really the problem is when we look at dental practices that are trying to make these decisions, they have a feeling and they know that
They think they're
they
ready, but
think
they
they're
don't know.
ready, but they don't have the data to support it. They don't have the confidence that they're making the right decision because there's nothing really empirical that they're looking at to say, yes, this is right. They have that feeling and that sensation and they kind of know. Um, but the depth of numbers that they look at is not quite
Well,
deep
nobody
enough.
teaches it, which is why we created our
Yeah,
online mentorship
Caroline's
and our
online
course.
stuff is very good. Her mentorship is amazing. The results she's getting with clients are out of this world.
Mhm.
The thing that I find is the most important about what she does is these analytic tools she uses provide that foundation so that it's not risk taking anymore. You know what you need. You know whether you're ready for that or not because the numbers are clear. They couldn't slap you in the face any harder. And I find that's the difficulty with dental professionals is often that they're making these decisions based on a feeling that the signs are there. They know that they're in the ballpark, but they don't exactly know they want to expand. Do they need two more ops or three more ops? Or they know they need to expand, but they don't know exactly what they need.
Mhm.
And that's what leads people into some problem scenarios of over expanding or doing a big renovation, adding two ops and having them filled within a year and saying, why didn't I build four? So I I don't feel we take risks. I feel we do the research, we put in the effort and the numbers, and we have a really solid basis to make decisions. And there really hasn't been anything that we've done that has backfired or not contributed to the success of the office, whether it was something that we do a lot of or not, whether it's dramatically impacted the bottom line or not.
Yeah.
I think they've all been positive because we put in that amount of effort to understand it.
Now, we've made mistakes. I think the difference though with us is we always look at everything as a learning opportunity, and we really do take that information and figure out how to do something
Yeah.
different.
There's unknowns that you're never going to be able to
Yeah,
account for. Have we made mistakes hiring? Yes,
absolutely.
but in looking at them as a mistake, you
They
have to
taught us
say
something.
this was a an unavoidable situation. Everything, all the available evidence, everything we could gather, everything that we could use to make a decision in this case looked like it was the right decision at the time.
Yeah.
And then factors that we never could have known beforehand came out that told us, yeah, this was a mistake.
Mhm.
And what we've been smart enough to do in a lot of cases is when those factors present themselves, we
We
don't
watch
ignore
for
them.
them.
We pull the trigger on making a decision quickly before that makes, before it grows, before it infects other, if there's a staff issue, before that staff member causes problems for other staff members, before that decision backfires and makes things bad. We see those warning signs that pop up after the fact, and we're not scared to pull back from a decision when it's clear that, yeah, we shouldn't have done it exactly that way.
Yeah. Well, I think that takes us to the end. So the last thing we're going to end with is, what was our favorite business win and our worst business moment? So definitely we could both agree on our worst business moment, which would be the unfortunate situation that we talked about with theft. But our favorite business win. What would be your favorite business win?
Um, well, overall, I would say for me, my biggest business win has been making the move from being involved with that big group, to take nothing away from the success that that had and the fact it's still going. My brother's still involved with it. They've gained locations since I was there. Their success, I think, is going relatively well. But for me, I'm much happier owning my own practice and
Mhm.
not being partners with other people and owning practices that I don't work in. Um, I see the corporate model and the DSO model as having its place, and there are certainly people that benefit from being in that environment. But I think for a dentist to achieve the optimum success with the education that they've invested in, I think it involves running their own practice. You'll have associates that work for you who, because of different wants and needs and ideas about the way their life is going to be, their work-life balance, etc., they want to be career associates, and that is certainly more than satisfactory to them. But if you're a dentist who is progressive, who has ambition to do the best you can for their patients, the ultimate freedom and the ultimate investment is owning your own practice. And the advantages that corporate dentistry bring to the table, while they're good for some people, dentists are very smart people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in dental school. And you can learn to run your business properly, just like you can learn to do fillings. You can learn to do extractions. You can learn to do implants. If you can learn those things, you can learn business principles and adhere to them and make the time to make them work and build a team that makes them work together. So I think that big win was starting over, doing something different and not being stuck in the idea that here I am in this big group and this is the way it's going to be forever. It's time to make a change, and that change has worked out great. I'm extremely happy with the situation I have. I have a tremendous partner. I have a tremendous location that I work in. I've been able to improve my dentistry by leaps and bounds over the last 8 years since that change has happened. And I'm much happier doing the dentistry I do now than I was then. I think Dr. Cox would be very proud of me for the steps I made. He was always someone that was extremely progressive. And all of the goals that I have had in dentistry, many of them were met before I made that change, and the ones that weren't have been met even further since then.
Yeah. I think my biggest win professionally was definitely hitting like a $2 million mark in the business. That was like a big milestone. I think like the $1 million was kind of, it was a stepping stone, but I wasn't satisfied there. And then I feel like ever since we hit that $2 million mark, every year we're seeing, strides and improvements and increases. And this year will be closer to probably 6 million by the end of the year. And I think that that's going to be another milestone for us to, achieve and to hit and to continue to grow. But on a personal level, I think ultimately the biggest success story of what we've built is the people. Like, I cannot stress how proud of the team I am. I think we have come a long way. We started out with like basically a completely different team than we have now. So, dealing with turnover, dealing with just like really not letting it change who we are as people, because you can get very hardened over time, having scenarios and people let you down and feel like you're giving your all and really giving your heart. But ultimately, I think we've created such a unique and beautiful dynamic. We have like over 30 staff, and they all have each other's backs, and they all get along relatively well, and even if they're not best friends outside of work, they work cohesively. I think that would be my biggest win in practice. Don't you feel that way?
I think elevating the office has been very satisfying.
Yeah, definitely.
I like the idea that we do things that other offices don't do.
Mhm.
I like the idea that we've become more of a destination for staff to seek out employment in an environment where most dentists are seeking out staff and trying hard to find people where they have holes and finding it a big HR challenge. There are always going to be little challenges here and there, but the more we elevate our office, the better the environment becomes for everybody. I think one thing that we've achieved that I'm very proud of is we have empowered our staff to do more than they may have thought was doable with their position.
Mhm.
And some of them had worked in offices where they felt they had reached their ceiling as a dental assistant. They were doing everything that they were ever going to do as a dental assistant. They had never worked anywhere else. They came on board with us and now have a totally different career. They have more responsibility. They have more interesting tasks to do. They're involved in more directly in the patient care. They may not be
Mhm.
doing the filling in the patient's mouth, let's say, as a dental assistant, but they're much more directly involved in what ends up in the patient's mouth.
Yeah.
Um, hygienists have worked in offices. Hygienists that work for us have worked in offices where they're the cleaners. It's like the patient comes in, goes through the car wash, goes out of the car wash, and they're not directly involved in the patient care. We've implemented scanning, wellness scanning. We've got our assistants doing training to be involved in the orthodontic Invisalign component of our practice. We've got the hygienist printing, 3D printing, and designing bite planes for us
Mhm.
with the dentist assistants. And and approval. And so things that hygienists don't normally do in other offices, they're part of the bike playing program. They're part of our 3D printing. They understand how these machines work. Where in other offices, the hygienists are just off in their ops doing the hygiene and not part of the rest of the dynamic.
Yeah.
So that makes everybody row the oars of the boat the same direction and be more invested in what they're doing rather than just all I do is clean the teeth. Well, they do a lot more. And that dynamic has been very satisfactory. And I feel like people have gotten more out of their careers because of the ability they have to do that. And that's very rewarding. It's probably, in addition to me feeling like I'm in a better place with my career, I feel like the people I work with have better careers as dental assistants, dental hygienists, and our admin staff. They have better careers than they would typically have in those positions
And
because
that's
of what we've been able to
that's
provide.
our opinion. I mean, there's definitely people out there that maybe don't want to do those things, but I
Yeah.
think that's a part of what I mean when I say
We're
I'm just
finding the
really
right,
proud of the team
Yeah.
because we do have the right people that are on board with our values, our vision, and these are like really,
we're
I
finding
think,
the right,
superior type of personalities.
we're finding the right fits for those positions, the people that want to achieve those things and want to progress that way. And that's why everybody is aligned.
Yep. All right. Well, that's it for this episode. And thank you for being a part of the podcast, Phil. He's trying to catch the dog. So if you can see this, you can see the dog. But if not, you're listening on audio. There's a really cute puppy. High five.
High five the puppy.
High five the dog. High five Phil. Go team. I guess the last thing I'll leave you with this is one really short answer, not a long-winded answer. What are you most excited for in the future? Rapid fire, something fast.
Well, I've never done a lot of ortho before. We've recently really upped our game with our Invisalign in the office, and I'm looking forward to doing a lot more work with some of our younger patients to give them straighter, brighter smiles with implementing our alignment program a little more in depth.
Look at Steve. Our cat's going crazy. All right, guys. Thank you so much. This was such a fun episode. I'm sure you guys will be seeing Phil back on the podcast. Definitely coming up in the near future. I know if you have any more questions, comments, people find it very helpful in terms of asking questions about business, partnerships. That seems to be kind of a burning question. Partnerships, how do they work? Those types of things. Send in your questions. We will circle back and answer anything that you have on an upcoming episode. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Dentistry to Business. If today's episode sparked an idea or inspired you, don't forget to share with your team or fellow dental leader. Let's keep elevating the business of dentistry together. For more insights, resources, and updates, follow me on Instagram at CarolineBellMintern and contact me and find my services at www.carolinebellmintern.com. That's www.carolinebellmintern.com. Until next time, keep leading with data and driving your practice forward. Bye.